Okay, hi there. Yes, it's Nick Dutchet again. Continuing with the lecture about science and essentially applying that to the occult. We're using Wikipedia as a reference source because it's quick and efficient and easy. We're still going through the essay on positivism, which was present on Wikipedia. Now, what we've looked at in the earlier part, in the previous video, is the philosophical and historical basis of positivism, and we've extrapolated as to, well, also we've seen that there are prejudices against metaphysical investigation within positivism, and we've worked out where some of the causes of that, where the historical causes of that culture of prejudice against metaphysical investigation seems to have come from. And now we're going to move on to the more, I would say, meaty information, namely talking more about what positivism is really about when it relates to science. And this section is called logical positivism. Logical positivism, later and more accurately called logical empiricism, is a school of philosophy. So we can see it's a school of philosophy. Right? So these schools of philosophy then backed onto the natural science world to help create the body of methodologies called science, which is, as we've already discussed from our previous look at anti-positivism, only part of the whole subset of the whole thing called science. It's a school of philosophy that combines empiricism, the idea that observational evidence is indispensable for knowledge of the world, with a version of rationalism, the idea that our knowledge includes a component that is not derived from observation. And that component not derived from observation is essentially rational thought. Logical positivism grew from discussions from a group called the First Vienna Circle, which gathered in the Café Central before World War I. After the war, Hans Hahn, a member of the early group, helped bring Murat Schlick to Vienna. Schlick's Vienna Circle, along with Hans Reichenbach's Berlin Circle, propagated the new doctrines more widely in the 1920s and early 30s. So there's a historical movement which came from certain groups of thinkers of the time, which helped to promote what has become the methodologies of modern science, or modern natural science. It was also Neurath's advocacy that made the movement self-conscious and more widely known. In 1929, a pamphlet written by Neurath, Hahn, and Rudolf Kamp summarized the doctrines of the Vienna Circle at that time. These include the opposition to all metaphysics, especially ontology and synthetic a priori propositions. The rejection of metaphysics is not wrong, but having no meaning. A criterion of meaning based upon Ludwig Wittgenstein's early work, the idea that all knowledge should be codifiable in a single standard language of science, and above all the project of rational reconstruction in which ordinary language concepts were gradually to be replaced with more precise equivalents in that standard language. So the positivistic movement, because it's more of a movement rather than just a way of approaching the world, seeks to control the use of language, which I'm actually in favor of, but on the other hand they're still restricting everything to one method of approach. In the early 1930s, the Vienna Circle disappeared, mainly because of political upheaval and the untimely deaths of Hahn and Schlick. The most prominent proponents of logical positivism emigrated to the United Kingdom and the United States, where they considerably influenced American philosophy. Until the 1950s, logical positivism was the leading school in the philosophy of science. So this movement from the 20s and 30s became the thing which dominated science, and of course it's still there today, which means that the metaphysical investigation that people like me are involved in gets pushed out to the side. And that's not necessarily a good thing, because as we've already seen, we can still use scientific disciplines in the analysis of what's actually happening. I would also add that a side effect, this is me talking, not the article, a side effect of the history of positivism and logical positivism that we're reading into at the moment is the need for natural science proof of a very fixed order and type, which I don't know if we can always do when we're dealing with metaphysical and spiritualistic concepts and metaphysical ideas. However, I mean, that's got to be a subject for another video. I've got to go into that in greater detail. During this period of upheaval, Kant proposed a replacement for the earlier doctrines in his logical syntax of language. This change of direction and the somewhat differing views of Reichenbach and others led to a consensus that the English name for the shared doctrinal platform in its American exile from the late 1930s should be logical empiricism. So this is a philosophy which has been turned into a scientific stance, and you can realistically tell that because the word empiricism is included there. I may do another series of videos on empiricism and what that's about, just so that we can try and get a handle as to what these people were talking about. Now, the discussion on positivism so far, from my point of view, has been looking at positivism and seeing where there are some flaws or issues. The main issue is that it excludes the metaphysical, as if the metaphysical has no place. So positivistic science, when applied to society, when applied to the human mind and the human being, it seems very cold, very, dare I say it, Teutonic in its approach. So it becomes useful to try and combine aspects of the positivistic or empiricist way of looking at things and the anti-positivistic that we saw in the previous group of videos. Okay? Alright, I'll just start this briefly and we'll go on to positivism in science. Okay? Back in just a sec.